Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Marinelli Podcast. In today's episode, we will be taking a look at the NFL playoff picture and the seedings in both conferences after Week 15 action. This year, only one team has clinched through 15 games, and it's the Green Bay Packers who won the NFC North. So, this year has been a very hectic year in the National Football League, and there's a lot still on the line for a lot of teams, as only 4 teams have been eliminated so far. Maybe 5. If Chicago has been eliminated, I'm not sure. So let's take a look at some of the games. So this week was the first week this season that we've had some game postponements. The Raiders and Browns was postponed until Monday because of COVID issues, and the Rams and Seahawks and Washington football team and Eagles game was postponed until Tuesday night. So we had a doubleheader on Monday and a doubleheader on Tuesday, which was kind of interesting. But that means for a lot of teams that they're going to have a short turnaround in a crucial Week 16 game. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, let's start with the Thursday nighter. We had Kansas City and LA. Basically, the winner of this game would get first place in the AFC West. So it was a pretty pivotal game for both teams. And, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs being the Chiefs, they won a thriller in overtime against the Chargers, capping a comeback. So with the win, they take a 2-game lead in the AFC West, evening the season series 1-1 with LA. Travis Kelce had a huge game and is having another amazing season. He's had 6 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. No other active tight end, has 4. The Chiefs have another game where they start slow, but they get better as the game goes on. Patrick Mahomes doesn't look like himself in the first couple quarters. Then he finds his rhythm and just hits all of his receivers as the game goes on. And the Chiefs defense, they were terrible the first 7-8 games of the season, but they have been so much better down the stretch. They look really good now. I was one of the people to completely write off the Chiefs when they were 3-4, and boy was I ever wrong. They are back. Whether they win the Super Bowl, I don't think so, but they will go far in the playoffs. Patriots and Indianapolis. The Patriots came into Week 15 one of the hottest teams in the league, winning 7 consecutive games, and the Colts just said no thank you and ran all over them in a 27-17 victory. Jonathan Taylor had another huge game with 170 rush yards and a touchdown, and he propelled the Colts to victory. This performance also extends his lead atop the NFL rushing race. He's for sure an MVP candidate, along with probably Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. The Colts defense was big, forcing 2 turnovers and getting a defensive touchdown. They had a 20-0 lead in quarter 3. The Patriots and Mac Jones had a good fourth quarter and made an interesting comeback, but it fell just short. Although New England looks pretty good. They're at 9-5 right now. They got a pretty favorable schedule down the stretch. Buffalo, Carolina. The Bills get back into the win column with a huge 31-14 win. They improved to 8-6. That's really, really necessary for the Bills, who kind of had a couple games where they didn't look like themselves. The Bills' defense shut down Cam Newton and the Panthers' rushing attack. Josh Allen had a monster day with 210 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was extremely efficient with the football. And Cam Newton struggles again in the passing game. But he did record another rush touchdown. He's had a rush touchdown in every game he's played, I think, to this point. Miami, New York Jets. This is Miami quietly heating up to be a really good team. They're on a 6-game win streak now, I believe. They're 7-7. The Dolphins actually overcame a 17-7 deficit in this one to win 24-7 to defeat the Jets. The Jets actually got 2 rush touchdowns from Zach Wilson. Braxton Berrios scored a rushing touchdown, and the Jets also scored an interception return for a touchdown. Tua threw for almost 200 yards, 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, so another decent game from him. Both defenses were not great. Miami's was the better unit, though. And then defensive tackle Christian Wilkins caught a TD pass for Miami, so that was one of the highlights of this game for sure. Detroit, Arizona. So this is the upset of the week. Arizona, they were the number 1 seed in the NFC and looked really good, even without Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. But this week they had no answers for Detroit. The Lions got their second win of the season, 30-12 against the Arizona Cardinals. With the win, the Jacksonville Jaguars are in position to take the first overall pick, so Detroit kind of screwed their tank a little bit, but yeah, the Cardinals only scored one offensive touchdown. Detroit's defense was great. It allowed 400 total yards, but it kept the Cardinals 0-for-4 in the red zone, so that's pretty impressive. And Jared Goff had a monster day too. He threw for 216 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks. Detroit, a lot of people write Detroit off, but they've got quite a few big-name talent guys over there, like T.J. Hawkinson at tight end, Amon-Ra St. Brown at wide receiver, and the running back core is pretty good too. Houston-Jacksonville, this was a tank bowl and a half. The Texans beat the Jaguars 30-16. The Jags are 2-12 in position for the first overall pick now. The Texans are 3-11. So this was a battle of bottom feeders, if you will. Davis Mills was efficient. He was 19 for 30, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. So he's pretty much the game manager today. And then Trevor Lawrence was underwhelming again. 22 of 38, 210 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. So this guy, sure, Trevor Lawrence is not on a very good team that doesn't have a lot of weapons and that had a psychotic coach for most of the year. He's gone now, but so obviously Trevor Lawrence is not in a position to succeed, but he was the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning. So I expect him to do a little bit better than he did this season, but oh well. And then the Texans special teams was good. It had a 98-yard punt return touchdown, so that was a game-changing play early on. The Dallas and Giants. So the Cowboys all but wrapped up the NFC East with a win over the Giants, 21-6. The Cowboys' defense looks really good. Micah Parsons is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate and a lock for Defensive Rookie of the Year. He has, I believe it's 11 sacks, some forced fumbles, some picks. And then you got Trayvon Diggs at the cornerback position. And guys, and their pass rushing unit is full of studs too. So Dallas's defense is just so much better than it was last year, and that's what's leading them to they're 10-4 right now. That's what's led them to their good record. Their offense has been good, but their offense has had some games where they've been okay. It hasn't been the high scoring offense that puts up 38 points a game. They've had some games where they've been okay on offense and have had to rely on their defense to win the games. Today was one of those games. Because Dak Prescott, he went for 217 yards and 1 touchdown. You expect more from him normally, but because their defense is so good, Prescott doesn't have to put up 35 points, 40 points like he did in the beginning of last season when their defense was crap. He can just kind of game manage a little bit more, which is, I guess, better for him. And then Mike Glennon, who was quarterback for the Giants because Daniel Jones was injured. He didn't play very good. He had under 100 yards passing, no touchdowns, 3 picks. And then Zerline actually didn't miss a field goal today. He was 3 for 3 on field goals, but he was 0 for 2 on extra points. So you can never have a perfect day if you're Greg Zerline. Steelers-Titans. The Titans are 2 different teams. There's the Titans with Derrick Henry, and then there's the Titans without Derrick Henry. The Titans with Derrick Henry are a powerhouse offensively. Without Derrick Henry, they're inconsistent and predictable offensively. The Titans took a 13-0 lead, and then the Steelers scored 19 straight points to win 19-13. So this game was basically the Titans for the first quarter and then the Steelers for the next 3. Both quarterbacks only scored 1 passing touchdown. Boswell hit 4 field goals, and Bullock hit 2 field goals, and those 6 points there were the difference. The Steelers' defense played lights out in the second half. They got 4 sacks, forced 3 fumbles, and got an interception. Those turnovers led to the points as well. And now the Titans basically fall to 9-5. They're 3rd seed in the AFC. And the Steelers are 7-6-1. They are in the hunt for a wild card spot. So what has looked like a iffy season from the Steelers, they're right in the thick of it. Broncos Bengals. This was an interesting game because a Denver Broncos win would mean they pass the Chargers in the standings, so they'd be second in the AFC West and sixth in the AFC. A Cincinnati win and a Ravens loss would mean that they overtake the AFC North lead, and they would be, I believe, fourth seed in the AFC. So there was a lot at stake at this game. It was basically like a mini playoff game. Denver's defense played well against a very potent Cincinnati offense. They limited Joe Burrow to 157 yards and 1 touchdown. A third of that came on one play. They held Joe Mixon, who came into the game with over 1,000 yards on the ground already, to 58 yards. And Bengals receiver to really make an impact was Tyler Boyd. He was around 100 yards, but over half his yards and his touchdown came on one play late in the third quarter to take the lead. The Broncos offense was just inconsistent, could never find its rhythm. There was too many drop balls by wide receivers. Like Cortland Sutton had a few drop balls. Jerry Jeudy had a few drop balls. Teddy Bridgewater was inaccurate with some of his throws. And the biggest thing I noticed in this game was a 6-point swing at the end of the first half. So the Broncos, this is what I don't understand about them. They're not aggressive at all. It just, the way they played their 2-minute drill just shows how little trust this coaching staff has in this offense. They get the ball with 2.5 minutes left, and they let so much time run off the clock. You can tell they're playing for a field goal. The thing is, if you're going to play for a field goal, you have to hit the field goals. But Brandon McManus, who's normally reliable, misses a 51-yarder. And then it takes the Cincinnati Bengals one play to get into field goal range of their own. And as a result, instead of Denver taking a 6-3 lead into halftime, it's the Bengals who take a 6-3 lead into halftime. So that's a 6-point swing. That really hurt. And then Teddy Bridgewater exited in the third quarter with an upper body injury. It looked really bad. He was escorted to the hospital. Drew Lock came in as the backup, and he played pretty well. He led a touchdown drive late in the third quarter to give the Broncos a 10-9 lead. And then on the ensuing drive, that's when the Bengals connected on that deep ball to Tyler Boyd. And then down 15-10, Locke was having another good drive, and Broncos fans were starting to think, oh, okay, Locke is actually playing pretty well. That's interesting. And then on a read option, he had the option to hand it to Javonte Williams or keep it. He decided to keep it. And lo and behold, he fumbles the ball in the red zone and inside the 10. And the Broncos did not score a single point after that, and they lost the game. So with Teddy Bridgewater injured, it looks like Locke is going to start the rest of the way. Denver's playoff chances are basically none, and Cincinnati is first in the AFC North. The Niners and the Falcons. The 49ers improved to 8-6 and get back into the playoff picture with a 31-13 thrashing of the Falcons. This game very one-sided. Jimmy G was efficient, 18 for 23, 235 yards and 1 touchdown, but the 49ers' run defense propelled them to victory. They recorded 160 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. That looks like their Super Bowl season numbers. 49ers controlled the game with their defense and the run game. Jeff Wilson Jr. had 110 yards and a touchdown. And George Kittle also played another fantastic game with 6 receptions, 93 yards. And then the Falcons' run game was ineffective. Ryan had to throw a lot but couldn't generate much offense with his throws. He finished 19 for 32, 236 yards and a touchdown. So not terrible numbers, but not great. Obviously, when you're down big, you need to throw and you need to hit deep balls down the field for touchdowns, and he was not able to do that. Ryan got sacked 3 times and was pressured all game by the 49ers front 7. Russell Gage did have a good week for fantasy owners, though. He got 8 balls for 91 yards and a touchdown. Packers-Ravens. So Apparently, John Harbaugh does not learn from any of his mistakes. After failing on a 2-point conversion against the Steelers a couple weeks ago, they tried again versus the Packers and fail. So, I don't understand John Harbaugh. You have the best kicker in the league. Take the point, go to overtime, and give your team a chance. Like, this stubbornness, I just don't understand. Sure, their secondary is in shambles right now, but just, if you get the ball first in overtime, you don't need your secondary. So, I don't understand John Harbaugh's play calling. Tyler Huntley played excellent for Baltimore, though. In Lamar Jackson's absence, Tyler Huntley decided that he would become the number 1 fantasy quarterback this week. He recorded 215 pass yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 73 rush yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. He's the last player to get 2 passing touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns in the same game since 2015 Cam Newton. Not even Lamar Jackson, who's elite in terms of mobility, has done that. On the Packers side of the ball, Aaron Rodgers is looking like an MVP again. 23 for 31, 268 pass yards and 3 touchdowns. He's able to put the ball anywhere on the field, and he's always able to generate points for his team, which is what you need on offense. The Ravens did a good job shutting down Green Bay's rush attack, but Green Bay's rushing attack did enough to open up the passing game for Devontae Adams and Marquez Valdes-Scantling, both of whom had good games. The Packers' defense, despite the numbers Huntley put up, was good too. If the Packers' defense wasn't as good as it was, the Ravens probably would have won this game by 10 points. And yeah, this game was very close. It was back and forth until the end of the third quarter. In the fourth quarter, Green Bay took a 31-17 lead. The Ravens' defense held the Packers to nothing in the fourth quarter, and their offense scored twice, 13 points, to be down by 1, and then instead of tying it and going overtime, they went for 2 and failed. So with the win, the Packers become the only team in the NFL to clinch a playoff spot, and they also clinched the NFC North for third year in a row. Tampa Bay, New Orleans. This one was another shocker. So Tom Brady struggled mightily against the New Orleans Saints defense in a 9-0 loss. The Saints have beat the Bucs twice this season, and Brady has gotten shut out for the first time since 2006. That is wild. The Bucs were 11.5 favorites. They didn't score a single point, so that's pretty awkward for any sports bettors out there. Evans, Godwin, Fournette, and a couple other key weapons were out for the Bucs. Possession time was very even. It was 30 minutes 16 seconds to 29 minutes 44 seconds for the Bucs. But apparently that didn't matter. Both teams were 0% in the red zone. Bucs didn't even get to the red zone. They were 0 for 0. And the Saints were 0 for 2 in the red zone. So the best offense in the NFL couldn't even get to the red zone. Mind you, the New Orleans Saints defense is pretty good. And the Bucs were down a few weapons. But Tom Brady not even getting to the red zone, that's wild to think about. The Bucs defense was great. It kept them in the game. They shut down the Saints' rushing attack. Kamara had 18 yards. Taysom Hill had 33. So only 51 combined. Taysom Hill didn't have a great day at quarterback either. But he did enough to get the Saints the win. He had 154 passing yards. And Marquez Callaway had 112 of those. The Bucs could move the ball on the ground and through the air relatively well on their own side of the field, but sputtered on the opposing side. The Saints defense, like I said, the Saints defense is good, really good. They forced 2 turnovers. They forced Brady to throw an interception, and they strip sack fumbled Brady as well. And they sacked him 4 times as well, so there was constant pressure from that front 7 all night long. The Bucs are 10-4. They can clinch the division next week. Saints are 7-7. They're trying to stay alive in the playoff hunt. They've got the best chance for the 7th seed among all the teams in the hunt currently. Raiders Cleveland was the loser of this game. Their playoff chances dwindle basically to nothing. Wouldn't you know, on a last-second field goal, it was the Raiders who stayed alive in the playoff race. The Cleveland Browns were one of the teams that was very depleted due to COVID. They were playing with their third-string quarterback, Nick Mullins, who didn't have that bad of a game. The Raiders took a 10-0 lead in the first half, and then they cooled down. They were outscored 10-3 in the second half before kicking the game-winning field goal. Despite turning it over twice, a fumble and an interception, the Raiders outgained the Browns on the ground, through the air, and won the possession battle handily. Carr was all right with 236 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. The Raiders' defense gained 98 yards on the ground and 236 passing yards with Carr. The Browns' defense played well, sacking Carr twice, forcing 2 fumbles, 1 lost, and picking off Carr once. They got the stops they needed in the first half. One was in the red zone to keep it close for their offense, but playing with a third-string quarterback, it's hard to get a win. So their offense couldn't capitalize, even with Nick Chubb on the ground. The Raiders' defense didn't record a single sack, interception, or forced fumble, but they still managed to hold the Browns to 14 points, which is good. And Raiders and Browns are both 7-7. However, the Raiders have a much higher playoff chances than the Cleveland Browns. Bears and Vikings. So the storylines in this game: Bears were able to move the ball well between the 20s, but had absolutely no success in the red zone. Turnovers, penalties, and miscues hurt them all game long. The Vikings defense played very well, limiting Chicago's run game and shutting down the limited wide receiver weapons that they had. Despite not controlling clock and possession time, the Bears did that. Kirk Cousins made the most of his limited snaps, although he had the fewest passing yards of any quarterback in a win with 87. However, he scored 2 touchdowns and 1 interception on those 87 pass yards. So that's a very strange stat line, but at least he got another win in prime time. The Bears' defense was pretty good too. It forced a turnover, an interception, I believe. It didn't let Cousins get what he wanted to, so it made life difficult for Kirk. And got some stops when necessary, but their offense couldn't match it. The Vikings won the game 17-9, although it was 17-3. The Bears scored a touchdown with literally no time left on the clock in quarter 4, and the Vikings won. They are now 7-7 and have the 7th spot in the NFC. Rams and Seahawks. It was a very defensive first half. Both defenses didn't give up any big plays. It was tied 3-3 at the half. The Rams then exploded in the second half and outscored the Seahawks 17-7. Cooper Kupp had another incredible game. He had 136 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. He leads all wide receivers with 14 touchdowns on the season, which is just remarkable. His season is looking like Devontae Adams' season last year when he had 17 or 18 touchdowns and over 1,000 yards. The Rams' defense excelled, and Russell Wilson did not have a great game. He was under heavy pressure all night long. He had 156 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick, and was sacked 3 times. His offensive line really didn't help him. Seahawks defensively were pretty good, though. They got 4 sacks. Carlos Dunlap had 3 of them, and their defense played great, especially in the first half, keeping the game close. They got an interception in the first half too, which led to their field goal. But in the second half, they just couldn't cover Kupp. Rams 10-4, tied for the NFC West lead with the Cardinals, and the Seahawks 5-9, all but eliminated from the playoffs. Washington football team and Eagles. So the Eagles turned the ball over twice in the first quarter, and the football team scored 10 points off those 2 turnovers. The second turnover was a fumble by Jalen Hurts, but the first turnover was the wildest thing that has happened all year, probably. Hurts escaped to his right, after the pocket collapsed, and he found Dallas Goedert, who was wide open along the sidelines. He passes the ball to Dallas Goedert. It's a little bit behind him, but it slips right through his hands, hits off his ankle, not the ground, hits off his ankle, and into the hands of the Washington defender. So that was wild. Garrett Gilbert was the third-string quarterback for the football team. He played because both Kyle Allen and Taylor Heineke were out with COVID-19. Considering he got the call on Thursday night that he was going to be the starter, and he only got to the facility Friday morning, which means he only had a couple days to prepare for this game, he played all right. registering 194 passing yards, no touchdowns, but no interceptions. The Eagles' rushing attack dominated with 238 rushing yards. Miles Sanders had 131 of them. So basically, the Eagles, when the Eagles were down 10-0, they just stuck to what they did best, running the football. Running the football worked for them. They were able to tie the game and take the lead. And then once they had the lead, they just kept running the ball, and Washington's depleted front seven could not stop them. Jalen Hurts scored 2 rushing touchdowns. He now has 10 on the year. That beats Mike Vick's previous record of 9 in a season. He also had a pretty good game passing, almost 300 pass yards, a touchdown, and a pick. The Eagles have gotten 200-plus rush yards in each of their last 7 games. They are the first team to do that since the 1985 Bears, who had the number 1 rushing attack that season, and the first time in franchise history since 1949. The football team had several injuries on both sides of the ball. Injuries and COVID on both sides of the ball. They just couldn't slow down Philadelphia. Philly has a pretty easy schedule. Well, I wouldn't say easy, but it's favorable for them. This week they got the Giants, who are playing with either Mike Glennon or Jake Fromm. So that's a winnable game for them if they keep running the ball. Next week they get the football team. Heineke's going to be back by that point. But, again, if the Eagles keep running the ball and play solid defense, that's another winnable game. And then in the last week of the season, week 18, they get the Cowboys. But the Cowboys might have everything locked up by then. So, the Eagles might just be able to sneak into the playoffs. And honestly, any team who can run the ball for over 200 yards in a game is a tough out. The Eagles can do that. So they're a tough out. They'd be a tough out in the playoffs if they can get there. So now we take a look at the AFC standings. Right now, as it stands, the Chiefs are 10-4. They have the first seed in the AFC. They have a 99% chance to make the playoffs. The Patriots are 9-5 with a 98% chance to make the playoffs. The Titans are 9-5. They're the third seed with a 97% chance to make the playoffs. The Bengals are 8-6, the fourth seed, with a 50% chance to make the playoffs. The AFC North is interesting because the Bengals are 8-6, the Ravens are 8-6, Steelers are 7-6-1, and the Browns are 7-7. So all these teams are within one game. So right now the Bengals have the division lead at a 50% chance to make the playoffs, but they could easily fall out of the playoffs if the Ravens win, the Steelers win, the Browns win, or they lose a game. The Colts are the 5th seed at 8-6. They have an 82% chance to make the playoffs. Carson Wentz has looked phenomenal under Frank Reich. The Chargers are 8-6. They are the 6th seed. They have a 73% chance to make the playoffs. And the Bills are 8-6. They're the 7th seed, and they have an 86% chance to make the playoffs as well. In the hunt, you got the Ravens. The Ravens are 8-6. They're tied with the Bengals. It's just the Bengals have the head-to-head over the Ravens. So the Ravens have a 38% chance to make the playoffs. The Steelers are 7-6-1. They got an 18% chance to make the playoffs. The Raiders are 7-7. They got a 10% chance to make the playoffs. The Dolphins are 7-7. They have a 6% chance to make the playoffs because they have a pretty tough schedule down the stretch. However, they've had an amazing little 6-game win streak. The Browns are 7-7. They have a 17% chance to make the playoffs. And the Broncos are 7-7. They have an 8% chance to make the playoffs. Personally, I think it'll be Chiefs is the 1 seed, Patriots is the 2 seed, Titans is the 3 seed, the Ravens is the 4th seed, Colts is the 5th seed, Chargers is the 6th seed. I'm gonna go Bills as the 7th seed. And in the NFC, we have the Packers as the 1st seed. They're 11-3. They're the only team in the NFL to clinch a playoff spot, and they have also won the NFC North. The Cowboys are the 2nd seed at 10-4. Bucks are the 3rd seed at 10-4. The Cowboys and Bucks have a 99% chance to make the playoffs. The Cardinals are the 4th seed at 10-4. They also have a 99% chance to make the playoffs. The Rams are the 5th seed at 10-4. They have a 99% chance to make the playoffs. The 49ers are the 6th seed at 8-6. They have an 83% chance to make the playoffs. And the Vikings are 7-7. They have a 31% chance to make the playoffs. They're the 7th seed. In the hunt, you got the New Orleans Saints, who have a 47% chance to make the playoffs because they have a favorable schedule down the stretch. The Eagles are 7-7. They have a 33% chance to make the playoffs. They got a pretty decent schedule too. The football team has a 6% chance to make the playoffs. The Falcons have about a 2% chance, and the Seahawks at 5-9 have under 1% chance to make the playoffs. So Aaron Rodgers is on a tear right now, so I see the Packers at the 1 seed. I see the Cowboys as the 2 seed. I see the Rams as the 3 seed because the Cardinals have been struggling recently and the Bucks just lost a whole bunch of weapons. And then in the 4th seed, that's where the Bucks come in. Then the 5th seed will be the Cardinals. The 6th seed, I'll take San Francisco. And the 7th seed, the Vikings have a really tough schedule down the stretch. I think they play Los Angeles, Green Bay, and another difficult opponent. So I don't like them. I like the Saints sneaking in as the 7th seed. Although the Eagles just might be that team to surprise everybody. But I think the Saints will get in. So yeah, this has been an absolutely wild NFL season. Like I said, having only one team to clinch a playoff spot after week 15, that's unheard of. That hasn't happened in a long time. And there's, in both conferences, the AFC and the NFC, there are so many teams within like one game of each other. It's absolutely crazy. There's just a logjam of teams in both conferences that are just competing for division titles and playoff spots. So it just makes for really entertaining football down the stretch. So yeah, the last couple weeks of the season, those are going to be really good. There's going to be, well, we're going to have, what I'm trying to say is we're going to have 3 more weeks of excellent football because there's going to be a lot at stake. A lot of teams still have a lot to play for. So it's going to be very interesting to watch. And one more thing that I just have to say, I'm sure a lot of you guys are fantasy football players. This week, week 15, was one of the worst, and by worst, I mean one of the most low-scoring weeks in the NFL in a long time. There were only 40 offensive touchdowns scored, so a lot of big-name guys that you might have had on your team probably had lackluster weeks, and that probably cost some of you guys a spot in the finals or the semifinals. And there was a lot of lesser-known guys that that were the number one in their position. For example, Duke Johnson was the best number one running back. Duke Johnson, for crying out loud. Tyler Huntley was the number one quarterback. Anyways, yeah, it was just crazy. So obviously, all the fantasy football players, they hope for a better Week 16 to make their semifinal or final matchups more interesting. And as a fantasy player myself, I hope for a high-scoring Week 2 because the more interesting the fantasy matchup, the better. Anyways, that is all for me. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support. If you liked the video, leave a thumbs up. And also, I'd appreciate it a lot if you subscribe to the channel. It's free. It only takes 2 seconds, and you can unsubscribe whenever you want to. Again, thank you very much for watching. Have a Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, and enjoy the last 3 weeks of the NFL season. It is going to be a wild ride. That's all for now. Marinelli Podcast signing off. Bye-bye.